Welcome to another segment of Ask Antar. I am your host, Melissa Faith Payne, and I am joined, of course, by the star of the show. Not me.
That's not what you say before we start recording, but yeah, okay.
Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. How are you today?
I'm doing okay. Doing okay. Preparing for our legislative session, our agenda, and just trying to keep my mind on the work for the people of Jackson.
So this is our 10th episode, and so we'll be entering into the holidays as people have a chance to see this.
Aren't there typically like donuts or a surprise when you like have a 10th episode of something like your, or do we have to wait till the 100th episode? Is that, I know the 100th episode is, big in sitcoms, so
maybe it's the 25th.
Okay, all right, I got you.
So as we're going into Thanksgiving, things that you're thankful for?
Oh man, good health. Thankful for the growth and development of my daughters. Thankful for the advancement of different projects and the support. I've been meeting with groups all week. We had the BAS group that is coming in to help support our sustainable city effort. We've just been meeting with more teams from Bloomberg that are supporting us. And so while we have a lot of real challenges within the city, just knowing that we have people who want to support is encouraging.
So we got a lot of questions in, and these are some, I literally just printed them out like 15 minutes ago, so I had a chance to peruse some of them, and they're pretty good, some pretty good questions. Okay. All right. So you ready to just jump in?
Dive on in.
Okay. Okay, wait. Some of these I didn't read. Okay, here's some questions you can ask the mayor of Jackson, focusing on the issues that you have mentioned. And these come from, I'm just going to say Mr. Thompson. I won't say his first name. Addressing abandoned buildings. What is the city's plan to remove or repurpose abandoned buildings in Jackson? And are there incentives for property owners to rehabilitate these buildings or consequences of neglect?
There are certainly consequences of neglect, but that typically goes through environmental court, and it can be a somewhat lengthy process, not only for the number of derelict properties that we have to address, but because there are loopholes within the process, people often transfer title to the property, which requires some level of restarting, re-engaging, in our community improvement division. And so that becomes difficult. But in terms of what we're trying to do, this budget cycle, there was more money allocated to planning and development for the demolition of derelict properties. So we intend on being even more aggressive towards that. And I would like to point to the fact that our planning and development department has, become more successful than it was in the past. I would point to the property on Briarwood Drive, the Briarwood Office Park, that had become, it had become an eyesore. You had many windows broken out. It was a danger because you had a few unhoused people who were staying in there and potentially setting fires to stay warm. But that property, due to not only our planning and development department putting it on the rolls, prosecuting the case, but Judge Jeff Reynolds pursuing that, we saw its demolition. We've seen properties in downtown Jackson across the Standard Life. This was some time ago. But those derelict, dilapidated, parts of them falling in on themselves, those buildings we demolished. People forget that we got rid of those.
Right.
Casa Grande, we got rid of Casa Grande. Even when you go on Ellis Avenue, we know that there have been many dilapidated hotels. There still are some, areas that are eyesores around there. But if you just look at the number of hotels that we've either fought for or encouraged them to demolish, we've had greater recent success. What people don't understand is that our annual demolition budget, if we focused on, just a couple, about 2 derelict properties, these large commercial buildings, then it could potentially wipe out our demolition budget for the entire year. And we have houses that we need to demolish. There are other areas that we need to get to. So the increase in the budget will help us be a little more aggressive towards that. But I would point to, again, that this is another area where we'd like to see, you know, a fund, a community fund that allows them to address this. When the city of Detroit was dealing with these issues, they were able to establish these type of community organizations that led to its demolition.
Hotel O, I mean,
Yes.
we talked a little bit about, I think last month, we know that the owner tried to board it up some, but the city's plan is still to demolish.
Yeah, we're still going to move forward with that. And, you know, the delay has been, you know, there's a process. And if you walk outside of that process, then the potential of the city being sued is increased, you know, or even potential criminal charges if you demolish a property that you don't, you know, appropriately go through the process. And so Judge Reynolds ordered it. The city council voted on it. And so we're moving forward. And I do want to point to the generosity of business owners and local residents that have supported the funding of that. They did not want to be named, so I won't name them, but I just want Jackson residents to know that there are good people out there who want to support the aesthetic appeal of the city, the safety of the city. And so that will be demolished once, you know, the process is complete and we can move forward. We are aware that the owner not only came to city council meeting, but, you know, there's been efforts to board up some parts of it now and clean up around it, you know. And, you know, while we're grateful that it's not as much of an eyesore, you know, as it was, that, you know, it still is a danger and we have to move forward. He met with the city attorney and myself early in this process. I shared this in the city council meeting, and, you know, he expressed concern in the process and expressed that there were people that weren't allowing him the permits to make the repairs that he needed. And so we tried to run that down, but there was no evidence of any application of that. When he came to city council, I said, listen, we didn't find anything. If you could, you know, only demonstrate that, then that would help us in this process, but that did not happen.
In the same vein, what steps is the city taking to encourage the development of new affordable neighborhoods within Jackson?
Well, first and foremost, we're grateful that we have a development that's coming near Livingston Place, off Livingston Road. Be about 200 market rate houses, which are sorely needed within our community. But in addition to that, we've been talking to Jackson Redevelopment Authority about the creation of a revolving loan fund, right? So in essence, the city would put aside money that would, you know, help maybe developers meet the gap that is often there when there are development projects. Anytime you have a community that's redlined, where there's a reluctance for banks to fund, then, you know, the developers bring money, but it's not a Jackson problem when there's a gap there and it's unable to be filled. That's a problem with any community that has been divested in. And so, in essence, what we'd like to do is become creative and become, you know, that bank that can fill the void and the little portion that's there. And through some small percentage of interest on that, not only will we be able to maintain that fund, but we'll be able to regenerate so that we can encourage more projects across the city. So that's what we're trying to do.
Oh, that sounds good. I think that's a good place for us to take a quick break. Stick with us. We'll be right back in just a few moments. Okay, so here's a question from Miss Macmillan. You declared a state of emergency on September the 10th, 2024 for the city. What does that mean for a citizen of Jackson like myself?
Well, that's a little broad. I'm pretty good in
What
remembering
happened September 10th?
remembering the reason for it. I don't really recall off the top of my head what happened on that day. But I can tell you the process by which I usually declare a state of emergency. The process of state of emergency is one which is engaged on the local level, where you declare that there is some threat to public health or safety. And based on that threat, there may be a need to engage in contractual services on a more expedited level, so that you can remove debris, that you can respond to whatever the threat is in a time frame that is shorter than what you would typically deal with on just a normal day. It also means that by enacting that state of emergency, if the threat is broad enough, then the county can then engage in a state of emergency, and following the county, the state, and then potentially the federal government. If it gets all the way to the federal government, then there is a likelihood or a stronger chance for reimbursement for the funds that we had to spend for an emergency. I don't know if that one was related to a storm.
Maybe one of the hurricanes?
Yeah, or the hurricane. And that's just to say, listen, we are aware of an impending threat that may result in down power, power lines, or, something that could lead to an interruption in the quality of life or the safety of our residents. And so that's why I typically enter into a state of emergency. I entered into a state of emergency surrounding a global health pandemic with COVID. Obviously, when we dealt with our water challenges, I entered into different states of emergency for those issues. So it depends on what the threat is. I don't really recall off the top of my head what that one was. But in September, the only thing I can recall was, the storms that were headed our way. And it also impacts residents on a personal level, depending on who their insurance carrier is. If they had roof damage, if they can see evidence of a city having declared a state of emergency, then it sometimes impacts their ability to make a claim and have the repairs that they need.
Okay. Jackson is supposed to be the leading city in the area. What is your vision for ensuring Jackson remains competitive and attractive as a place to live and work?
Well, continuing to try to grow the economy, the infrastructure, meeting the sustainable development goals that we have for our residents. Sustainable development goals are those that truly get to the heart of the quality of life for residents. Less concerned with, GDP or things like the stock market, because those aren't indicators for how, the average citizen is living. You can tell me that the economy is stronger, but if, you're telling me that the pie is larger, but, Miss Jones' slice of it hasn't gotten any larger,
Right.
then what does that really mean?
Right.
So, we're working in a number of regards to do that. We're working with Emily out of the AMA, African American Mayors Association, to look at, pathways to economic growth for them. We're working with, as I said, BASIC, which is an organization looking at how Jackson becomes a more sustainable city. We're looking at trying to increase support for our workforce. We have support from Bloomberg that is helping train and develop people who can do solar panels, not only as a career, as they become technicians, but also to reduce the costs for residents. We talked about revolving loan funds for supporting economic development and filling the gap for other businesses. When it comes to businesses that we want to locate here, we're always willing to incentivize, do TIFs and things of that nature in order to support their development and other things that they may ask for within reason. So there's a long buffet, or there's a menu of options that just fit depending on the exact circumstance. We've been in discussions with AWS as they're developing in Madison County. We're talking about their footprint and the workforce that much of which will likely come from Jackson, and how they are making sure that their footprint is felt here in the city of Jackson, and that we prepare for that, even though the actual business won't be in Jackson.
Right.
It's no different than Nissan. We have people who work in Canton that work at the Nissan factory, or working near Clinton at the Continental Tire factory. But they live in Jackson and they're employed, and so we want to build and grow more. We're constantly looking at opportunities for economic development in the city of Jackson. There are things that we have been on the cusp of achieving, and we'll just say, for a lack of continuity, not within the city, but with some of our partners, those projects have not been placed in the city of Jackson. I do want to be clear that while we want to be as competitive as possible and work towards economic development in the city of Jackson, I don't believe, nor have I ever accused our bedroom communities of being competition to us or push back on them. Now, the reality is, if they get an opportunity and we don't, then shame on us. We need to continue to figure out what we put in the pot in order to entice that. Our competition is Birmingham. Our competition is Mobile. Our competition, is, cities within our region of similar size, similar capacity, and not our neighborhood communities. Now, if Jackson does not thrive, then it should be understood by not only the residents of Jackson, but those that surround Jackson, that it leads to the potential decline of us all, right? A rising tide lifts all boats. And with Jackson's growth and development, it ensures the spillover of our other communities. The development of our other communities do not necessarily ensure the development of Jackson.
Right. Okay. This question is from Miss McLaughlin. I'm a disabled person who lives, I won't give her address. I moved from Florida to Jackson and spent my life savings to purchase a home. But since I've lived there, I've had things stolen. I've been intimidated and threatened by the homeless living in the house next door. Please help.
Mm-hmm. Well, first and foremost, I appreciate her expressing, the direness of her circumstance. And, I will say this, that if you've been threatened, if you've had things stolen, then you've had things stolen by criminals, right? I don't want to summarily associate the issue of being unhoused with being criminal, right? Now, are there individuals who are unhoused and may choose to do criminal things? Absolutely. But, I certainly want to make sure that she's reporting that, and we can look at tools within our police department to ensure the safety of her home, and that that activity that there is not an environment which is conducive to that activity taking place. With respect to the unhoused, it has to be a comprehensive program. You can't criminalize poverty. First of all, you can't do it because it's not morally correct. But secondly, you can't do it because it's not practically possible, right? We don't have the space for detention of, just putting people in a cell because they're living on the street. And if we do, on occasion, find somebody in violation and put them of some law and put them in detention, then they're likely just released again into the same circumstance. So the issue of homelessness is one where you have to have a program that addresses both those that are unhoused because of lack of services, meaning that there are mental health challenges, meaning that there are addiction challenges, meaning that there are workforce challenges that need to be addressed. And then those who are unhoused just because of a lack of housing, right? And find a transitional program that allows them to receive the services, that allows them to have the dignity of being housed as they, move forward towards being able to sustain on their own. And so that's what we're pushing for. That's what we're trying to create for the first time in Jackson's history, and we're determined to do so.
Okay. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Okay, so this question is from Dre. Once again, I commend you on your humbleness and your skill set to not go off and be erratic with your fellow council members that push agendas and narratives and just say nasty things about you. My questions are, what do you envision for your next run, and what motivates you to continue to run?
Well, what I envision in terms of, a next campaign is making sure that I get the facts to people, right? And those facts are often distorted. People aren't aware of what's happening in their city, what progress has been made, what challenges remain, and why those challenges remain. So I think that, as with any campaign, I have to make the case. And I don't want a campaign that focuses on negativity.
Right.
I want to cast a vision for the future. I want to talk about the positivity and what we can, move towards collectively going forward. I want to talk about the partnerships that we've been able to bring in. The fact that we've brought in more money than any administration in recent history, and that we need to ensure that we're able to reach completion on a lot of our goals. What leads me to run again is just a love for people, wanting to make certain that the harm that I see, the many people who call me about flooding in their communities, that as we have identified resources and how we're going to address that the funding for those programs, that we see those programs actually happen. I think of the couple in the Queen subdivision who said that every administration has promised that they're going to do something towards their flooding. And now that we have that money, I don't want to leave them there for the process to restart and re-engage. Now, I'll be clear that I have no vision or no desire to be mayor forever, right? I do not think that, that's what I want personally for my life, nor do I think that the residents of Jackson ultimately benefit from, one individual being at the helm for far too long. So we do need to identify what transition looks like. We do need to identify, how we empower more people to move forward. With respect to the council, I don't think that it's beneficial to go back and forth when things are being said, because that doesn't benefit the residents of Jackson. I will say this to the residents of Jackson. Whether I'm reelected, whether I'm the mayor or anybody who would sit in this seat or the council seat, until we have a comprehensive team that understands the role of each person, then we will fail to meet, our potential. Because the reality is that the council is not there to be antagonistic to the mayor. The mayor is not there to diminish the role of the council. What should happen is that the council should be an extension within the community that advocates, the mayors, if you will, of their wards, so that they advocate and encourage and identify what the challenges are, so that it can be communicated up top, and there could be strategy in terms of how you resolve those. When you're at odds, right, then the only strategy that is in place is one of how you avoid conflict, how you avoid the negative sentiments or the projection of a lack of progress. And so that's what naturally ensues when people aren't working arm in arm. What tends to happen is that typically, there is a natural ambition of council members, and I'm not just speaking of Jackson, I'm speaking nationwide, who actually want a different office, right? Mm-hmm. They actually want to be the mayor, right? In many instances. And so that sometimes precludes them from holding the role that they're in, right? And supporting from the role that they're in. And that's what should happen until, a later day that they decide to run for a different office. There's nothing wrong with them running for mayor. I tell people that I don't own this position. It's not mine. That I don't run against anyone. I run for the position. And so we should all, be certain that we're doing the job that we're in. Scripture tells us, be faithful over the little things and he'll make us the ruler over much. And so if we can't demonstrate faithfulness over where he has us, then, then we're not prepared to take over more territory.
And then there was one more part of this question. What is your vision for for the next chapter if reelected?
Yeah. Well, it's just, being able to not only advance our goals in terms of infrastructure, but there are a lot of, creative ideas that I simply haven't been able to deploy, right? How we engage in what helps build our economy through cooperative development. There are some things that I believe would motivate and create a greater sense of pride in the city of Jackson, aesthetically across the city, that I haven't been able to pursue. And I haven't been able to pursue those things because, I've been chasing after historic challenges, to redevelop streets and make sure that we have reconstruction, to have sidewalks. Do we realize that in many areas that we now have sidewalks, residents in Jackson haven't seen sidewalks in a great, to any, real extent in those communities for some time, right? We've seen, positive change and movement with, our public transit system. We want to become a multimodal mobility city, which means that however you choose to travel, whether by private car, by bus, by, scooter, bike, or walking, that we have an infrastructure which is accountable to that, which is supportive of that. And so we want to see the growth of our city and make certain that we're being intentional in the decisions that we make, so that the current decisions we're anticipating rely on past decisions that we've made and future decisions we anticipate.
Okay. So there's a question on here. I'm not going to read it because it's way too long, but it's about the website. And so city residents have expressed a lot of frustration with the challenges with the website. And so basically this person's asking, what's up?
Well, first, let me say your frustration is warranted, right? And we want you to know that we hear you on that, and just assure you that we're working on it. It's not because of a failure to deal with it. It's because there's an upgrade taking place. And the reality is, when you have something like a website, there's never a good time to do it. And there's no process other than interrupting some of those pages that you can go through for its rehabilitation or to make it more user-friendly. And so our IT team is working, diligently to stand it up, so that the new portals that we have, we talked about, we celebrated the new vendor self-service portal that they can access, that it's easy not only to find but to use in every regard. And so we understand you're frustrated. It is because there's an upgrade going on, and we cannot upgrade and not interrupt at the same time. We're not a seasonal city, right? There's no season that we're closed, and this is our down season, and this is where we can do it. We're a 24-hour, 365, city, and because of that, this is just the moment that we thought was best to move forward, and so hopefully that is coming to an end soon. But there is work going on with that website daily.
Okay. So last question, because we're in November and it's like Thanksgiving. So what is your favorite thing or things to eat on Thanksgiving? What are you looking forward to the most?
So first of all, I don't know, for those people that are still baking their turkeys, why they would be doing that. Fried turkey is,
Where it's at.
that's just the world now. That's what should happen.
Do you fry your
No, I don't.
Okay.
I do play a role in our family Thanksgiving tradition, but it's not actually on Thanksgiving Day. I'll get to that.
Okay.
So my favorite thing to eat is usually either mac and cheese. Everybody doesn't do this for Thanksgiving, but I am a fan of mashed potatoes and gravy. So those are probably my favorites. Now, what I do is usually the day after Thanksgiving, I make what, my in-laws have dubbed as Lumumba rolls, right, which are our version of egg rolls. So I make homemade egg rolls. It was my favorite thing that my mother would make, and because I liked it and asked for it on my birthday all the time, and the process is tedious and long, she, required me to learn. So I actually roll my own egg rolls, but it's not like a Chinese, what that we know from Asian establishments.
Not the wrapper?
No, the wrapper is the same, but the contents are different. So I usually put yellow rice pilaf, turkey pastrami, spinach, and cheese in those. I've also gotten into making a brisket and I will take the leftovers from Thanksgiving if we had mac and cheese and greens, and I'll do another one where I have brisket, mac and cheese, and greens in another one.
We
So-
expect those here at City
Well,
Hall.
it just depends. If there's any left, we'll see.
All right. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. If you have questions and want to be a part of Ask Antar, make sure that you write in. You can go to the city website. Be patient with us. Click the tab that says Ask Antar.
What's my name?
Antar.
Okay.
Submit your questions, and you can also find us on social media where you can ask your questions there as well. In the meantime, thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone, and we'll see you guys next time.
Happy Thanksgiving.